All right, we've got our must-start players for Week 12 of fantasy football. But before I go any further, hit that thumbs up, click the bell to subscribe to this channel, and, well, leave all your Week 12 questions for start, sit right there in the comments. I'm going to get back to each and every one of them. Let's get started with the quarterback position, where we're looking at Geno Smith, quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks, going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. And Geno's had 2 or more passing touchdowns in 8 of his last 10 games this season. Now, he's been a top 12 quarterback in 6 of his last 8 games, so we're already seeing this consistency. I don't think there's very many questions left about, is Geno Smith a good starting fantasy quarterback anymore? He's shown it every single week, and now he's got a juicy matchup going up against the Raiders, who are giving up the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterbacks. This game has the 3rd highest implied point total according to Las Vegas, not the Raiders, the actual bookkeepers, and Geno's got an NFL high 72.8 completion percentage, so we're not really expecting a whole lot of turnover, so that's a good prop bet if you want to look at that, the over-under on interceptions. And Raiders, they're last in expected points added per pass attempt, so this is just a perfect matchup of talent meeting opportunity to go up against a bad defense. Start Geno Smith as your streaming quarterback this week. Now let's get to the running backs. There's just been a lot of injuries leading to opportunity. This is a 0 RB drafter's dream type of week. Let's take a look at the first running back I've gotten. Well, he's a great candidate as an RB1 this week. It is Jeff Wilson, running back for the Miami Dolphins, going up against the Houston Texans. He has become the lead running back for the Dolphins, whether or not Raheem Mostert was in the lineup. And now Raheem Mostert, dealing with the knee issue, has not been practicing and has already been ruled out in this game versus Houston. Jeff Wilson, over these last 2 weeks, even with Mostert in the lineup, has been a top 8 PPR fantasy running back since joining the Miami Dolphins. This is one of those guys that's absolutely going to win you your league, and, well, to be quite honest, he's going to win you your week here in Week 12. The Houston Texans are allowing the most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Yeah, Jeff Wilson is in a smash spot this week. For the RB2, I'm looking at Rachaad White, running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's going up against the Cleveland Browns this week, and, well, Leonard Fournette is listed as doubtful. So even last time that they played together, after Fournette went down with that hip injury in Week 10, Rachaad White, he played 20 of a possible 25 snaps. So I don't know if it was just something where maybe the Bucs hadn't quite adjusted, or that is going to be the game plan going forward. But either way, the prospects look pretty good for Rachaad White going into this game. He goes up against a Cleveland team that's giving up the 2nd most fantasy points to running backs. And, well, he's been more of a receiving back. When you look at him coming out of college, Arizona State, that's what he was known for. He was a good pass blocker, a good receiver, but now he should have that nice floor with the receiving work, and then he's going to get the carries. We're talking about a guy that got 20 plus carries in his last game, and if he gets that same kind of rushing work going here into Week 12, well, you're looking at a player that could have some top 12 potential. Right now, I've got him ranked in my top 15 running backs. At my RB3, I'm taking a look at Michael Carter, the New York Jets running back. He's going up against the Chicago Bears, and I know it's a Jets player, and there's a lot of, let's say, bad juju, bad energy going around on that team, but Michael Carter might be the silver lining in all of this. Okay, Mike White is now the starting quarterback for the New York Jets, and Mike White, one of only 2 quarterbacks with a check-down rate of at least 10% over the last 2 seasons amongst quarterbacks with a minimum of 100 dropbacks. Basically what that means is, out of all the starting quarterbacks that have been playing games, Mike White is the guy that's dumping off the ball to running backs the most. Remember how I said those 2 QBs with a check down rate of at least 10%? The other one is Joe Flacco. So it really doesn't matter which other quarterback the Jets start. The running backs should be seeing the ball more, okay? And that rate of 10%, nearly double what Zach Wilson was doing at 5.3%. So yeah, there should be a big shift in this offense of going from a lot of that downfield passing and really just frantic offense with Zach Wilson to probably a more controlled offense, a lot more of those dump offs to Michael Carter. So once again, this is another player with a receiving background that should be able to give you a good floor here in Week 12. Last year with Mike White at quarterback, Michael Carter averaged 19.5 PPR points. He even had 1 week where he was the RB1 overall. Now, I'm not going to make the jump and say that Michael Carter is an absolutely top 12 or top 20 guy, but as an RB3, yeah, I'm really comfortable starting him. So if you've got him on the fringe and you're wondering whether or not you should be starting Michael Carter this week, maybe as a flex play, go ahead and do it. He's going up against the Chicago Bears, who are giving up the 5th most fantasy points to running backs. They're also giving up an average of at least 1 rushing touchdown per game to running backs, just a little bit over, 1.1. So Carter could fall in the end zone. He could get some decent receiving work. And if you're worried at all about James Robinson, just go and look at the numbers. He hasn't been very good this year, even when he's shifted over to the New York Jets. And even last week, he was outsnapped by running back 3, supposedly on that roster, Ty Johnson. So yeah, I'm going to give the nod to Michael Carter this week as a really good RB3/flex play. All right, let's start with the wide receiver position. And at the wide receiver 1, I'm looking at Terry McLaurin for the Washington Commanders. He's going up against the Atlanta Falcons. And man, things have just been going really well for him now that Taylor Heineke has become the starting quarterback there in Washington. All right, McLaurin has had an over 30% target share through the last 5 weeks with Taylor Heineke at quarterback. It's the strangest things. You target your good players and good things happen on offense. Yeah, I don't know. It's just this weird scientific thing that not many coaches can figure out in the NFL. But now, Terry McLaurin's going up against the Atlanta Falcons, who have given up the 2nd most fantasy points to wide receivers. It is an awesome matchup for him, for a guy that's been showing some consistency with this new quarterback. Now, Atlanta continues to allow the most passing yards per game, so it's not just even a fantasy points thing. It's just kind of all over when it comes to the passing game for them. McLaurin's really hit his stride as of late, totaling nearly 300 yards over his last 3 games. This is an easy one. Don't overthink it. Start Terry McLaurin. All right, as a wide receiver 2 for this week, we're taking a look at Joshua Palmer of the Los Angeles Chargers going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Now, if you're like me, yeah, we benched Joshua Palmer last week thinking Mike Williams is back, right? He's 200% healthy, like he said, right? Wrong. Joshua Palmer goes off anyways for 30 PPR points. Mike Williams likely out for this week again as well. Keenan Allen still recovering from his injury, but even with Keenan Allen in the lineup, Joshua Palmer went off. So let's take a look at what he's been doing. Has this just been a fluke or has this been over time? Well, since week 9, Joshua Palmer is the wide receiver number 4 overall in PPR formats. He's been averaging 10 targets per game over his last 4 weeks with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen out of the lineup. And then we saw, even with Keenan Allen back, he was able to produce. Over that same 4-game span, Palmer's averaged 18 PPR points per game. He's 4th in targets, 4th in yards, 3rd in receptions of 20+ yards. So you also have a guy that can give you the big play if necessary. He's kind of taken over that Mike Williams role pretty seamlessly, and I don't think a lot of people expected that. But he's got a good matchup here going up against the Arizona Cardinals in a game that has the 2nd highest implied point total by Vegas, so expect a lot of offense, expect a lot of passing. I think Kyler Murray should be back for this game, so Joshua Palmer, you can fire him up as a top 24 wide receiver this week. All right, at the wide receiver 3 spot, we're looking at a name that really has disappointed a lot of fantasy managers this year, but it's Drake London, wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons. And, well, listen, I know it's been tough being a manager that's rostering Drake London. I have as well, but he's got a good matchup this week. He's going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are dead last versus fantasy wide receivers, are giving up the most points. Kyle Pitts has now been placed on IR, so we hope and we think that should open up a few more opportunities for Drake London. Even if it means just 1 or 2 more targets, that's huge in this offense where you don't always have a lot of passing opportunity. Now, London's been averaging just over 5 targets per game through his last 4 contests. Now, like I mentioned, that should be going up in theory. Now, despite all this disappointing passing attack that Atlanta has had for so long, London's actually had back-to-back touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. So he goes up against the Steelers here, who are giving up the most fantasy points to wide receivers, like I mentioned. And it may not be pretty, but Drake London should see an increase in passing volume. He should see, hopefully, we think, an opportunity to score in the end zone this week. And, well, a good player going up against a bad defense, it's just one of those opportunities where you're able to start Drake London as a top 36 wide receiver in your fantasy lineup. All right, my last guy here at the tight end position. This is always a tough one because there's not a lot of good starting fantasy tight ends out there, but Foster Moreau, tight end for the Las Vegas Raiders. He's going up against the Seattle Seahawks, and I mentioned this game earlier when I talked about Geno. This game has the 3rd highest implied point total according to Las Vegas, and, well, the Seahawks are going to be able to put up points against this really bad Raiders defense. The Raiders might even be without Josh Jacobs as well. This is kind of crazy, but it's been coming up on us here towards the end of the week, and when a team is without one of their star players, specifically a player like Josh Jacobs, who means so much to their ground game, they're going to have to make some adjustments, especially going against the Seattle Seahawks offense that's going to be able to put up points. So you could see a lot of passing in this one. Derek Carr has actually been pretty good over the last 3 weeks with 6 passing touchdowns, no interceptions. He's been showing some efficiency despite this Raiders team not being all that successful. But Foster Moreau becomes a guy that you can absolutely stream at the tight end spot. Seahawks are giving up the 2nd most points to the fantasy tight end position. Foster Moreau should be in your lineup if you have a question mark at tight end.